In Australia, there is something more terrifying than snakes and spiders. Now, in Queensland, there was this story from this older gentleman who lived alone in the bush. Now, every night he would sit on his porch, and on his house, he had this bright spotlight. And so one night he was sitting out on the porch and he was just enjoying the weather when all of a sudden that spotlight on the side of the house goes out. So he thinks, okay, the bulb must have burned out. I'll go inside and replace it. So after he goes inside and he grabs a bulb and he goes around, he gets his ladder and he goes up there to change out the bulb. But when he gets up there, he notices something has taken the bulb out. And so he's like, what could have happened to the light bulb? Like, did someone steal it? And right at that moment, he starts hearing the sound of two rocks clinking together. They got a little louder, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees this tall, shadowy figure run by. So he gets down off the ladder and he runs inside, locks the door, and he immediately phones the police. Now, he lives so far out in the bush that the police cannot get there until the morning. So as he's waiting for the police to come, he keeps looking out the window. And from time to time, he would see this tall, shadowy figure sort of run by. And he would think that he saw these bright, glowing eyes that almost look like two flames. And so eventually the morning comes and the police arrive. And when he goes to the door and answers it, he said it was this Aboriginal fella. And the officer begins talking to him and he explains to him, something stole the light out of my spotlight. And I began seeing these shadowy figures and I could hear the sound of two rocks clinking together. And this officer just gives him this very serious look. And he says, that's weird because my people, we have this story of something we call a Malinge. And he said, well, what's that? He said, well, he's this tall fella that has very hard skin, almost like a rock. And he walks sort of very awkward. And it said his knees slap together. And he doesn't like any sort of light. And most of the time, he'll, avoid you. But if you make him angry, it could be very bad. But he said, that's just a legend. We make up to scare the young kids. And so after the officer left, he just couldn't help but think did I make this thing mad by having that spotlight up? So that night, it started to get dark and he went back out on his porch. And as he sat there looking out off into the distance, he began to hear the sound of rocks clinking together. Clink, 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 clink. And he began to see this very tall, shadowy figure standing there with these bright, glowing eyes that look like fire. And so he instantly turned around, ran inside his house, and locked the door. But this thing didn't go away. It came up to the door and it started shaking the handle. So as he's sitting there by the door, hoping this thing doesn't come inside, it moves over to the window and it breaks out the window and it tries to come inside his house. So he goes out the back door and he runs around to his Jeep and he jumps in and he turns on the lights and he starts up the vehicle. And instantly when the lights hit this thing, it took off running back into the bush and he managed to drive out of there. So what do you think? Is the Malinge real?